Snow Pine was experiencing another snowy winter. The town was covered with a fluffy white blanket, and in the evenings the residents gathered in the main square, where the local Mary's Cafe hosted cozy gatherings with mulled wine. Roasted chestnuts, garlands and the aroma of cinnamon all created a magical holiday atmosphere. But on this particular evening, the usual peace was once again broken by a loud rumble. The residents looked up and saw a silver ship landing right next to the Christmas tree. "Here we go again," Jim sighed, setting aside his mug of mulled wine. The ship opened, and out stepped Bob, Steve, Phil and Tony, the same aliens who had already become famous for their clumsy adoption of Earth traditions. "Snowpine, hello," Bob shouted, waving his arms. "We've come to learn a new art." "What art?" Mary frowned, already sensing trouble. "The art of keeping warm in winter," Steve declared proudly. "We've learned that you Earthlings use a drink called mulled wine for that purpose." Jim choked and Mary dropped her spoon. "You want to try mulled wine?" she asked. "Yes, I do," Bob confirmed. "We think it's an important cultural experience." Mary brought a large pot of hot mulled wine and began pouring it into mugs. The aliens watched this process with as much interest as if she were opening a portal to another universe. "Is that hot wine?" Phil asked suspiciously, sniffing his mug. "Well, yes," Mary confirmed. "With spices, fruit, and a little magic." "Magic?" Bob's eyes lit up. "We love magic." Steve didn't hesitate and took the first sip. His face changed instantly. It turned first green, then blue, and then back to its normal color. "It's hot," he shouted. "Of course it's hot, it's mulled wine." Mary laughed. "But it burns." Steve continued to be indignant. "On our planet all drinks are served at -20. Bob, meanwhile, decided to get creative. He took his mug, pulled out some strange device and began to heat the drink to boiling. "What are you doing?" Mary gasped. "Improving the recipe," Bob replied cheerfully. The result of his experiment was an explosion of foam that covered everyone around him. After the first batch failed, Bob decided it was best to take matters into his own hands. He asked Mary for the pot, the wine, and all the ingredients she had used. "We'll make the perfect mulled wine using our techniques," he declared. The aliens turned on their gadgets, which started making strange noises. 5 minutes later, bright green steam rose from the pot. "What kind of nuclear cocktail is this?" Jim asked, looking at the result. "It's our version. We added some plasma spices and a dash of antimatter to enhance the flavor," Steve proudly explained. "Is it even safe?" Mary was wary. "Of course it is," Bob assured her. They poured their mulled wine into mugs, and the townspeople, out of curiosity, did try it. The reaction was immediate. Jim's eyes began to glow for a second, Mary felt her hair rise up slightly, and the local dog Barker's tail began to glow. "That's unusual," Jim remarked cautiously. "It's an explosion of flavor," Bob declared cheerfully. After experimenting with the alien recipe, Jim suggested a compromise, to make mulled wine together, combining the traditional recipe and light alien innovations. "No antimatter," Mary added sternly. And so, under Jim's guidance, a new process began. They added wine, spices, orange slices and some honey. And Bob and his team suggested adding a light glowing powder from their planet, which was perfectly safe, according to them. When the drink was ready, it looked like regular mulled wine, but gave off a soft glow, creating a dreamy atmosphere. "Now this I can understand," said Jim, taking a sip. "This is the best I've ever tasted," Phil declared, his antennae glowing with happiness. The townspeople and the aliens threw a big party right in the square. They lit a fire, put on some music, mixing Christmas songs with alien motifs, and danced until deep into the night. The mulled wine with a light alien light was a real hit. Children, although they didn't drink the drink, were happy with the glow, and adults enjoyed the cozy atmosphere. "I guess you guys have mastered our art of keeping warm after all," Mary said, raising her mug. "Can we take the recipe to our planet?" Bob asked. "Only if you don't add antimatter," Jim laughed. Before they left, Bob gave Mary a crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. "This is our thanks for sharing your tradition with us," he said. "And what do you plan to study next time?" Mary asked. "Your desserts," Bob replied with a wink. "We heard about something called marshmallows." "Oh," sighed Jim. "This is going to be fun." The ship took off, leaving behind a glowing sign. "Thank you for sharing your drink. Next time, sweet Earth treats." As soon as the alien ship disappeared over the horizon again, the citizens of Snow Pine went back to their normal routines, but no one could forget the evening they had spent with the aliens. The whole town discussed the antimatter mulled wine, and the children put on a show imitating the glowing effect that was left after the aliens added their powders to the drink. Jim and Mary kept laughing about how it went, and Mary even started to jot down her thoughts on how to avoid similar experiments in the future. But their conversation was interrupted by a new rumble. The aliens were coming back. The ship landed in the central square again, but this time the aliens were not in their usual silver suits, but in strange aprons with colorful symbols and pictures of food. "Oh, no, they're not with the mulled wine again?" Jim muttered. No, Mary reassured him, "they promised to explore desserts. It should be something new." As soon as the aliens stepped out of the ship, Bob was holding a huge container with unknown contents. "Hello, Earthlings!" he exclaimed loudly. "We have returned to investigate your sweets." "Sweets?" Jim asked in surprise. "Yes. We have discovered something called marshmallow. We've studied your mulled wine and realized that it's not just a drink, but part of a deep tradition. And now we want to master your desserts." Mary, as always, took the lead. She motioned for everyone to sit at the table, and the aliens began unwrapping their scientific instruments. "We've brought our best-tasting technology. This device analyzes the composition of your dessert with atomic precision," Bob announced excitedly, pulling out a device that looked like a mixture of a thermometer and a mixer. "Well, come on," Mary smiled. Mary explained to the aliens that marshmallows were air candies that were usually roasted over an open fire, but they could be simply eaten raw as well. "Could we roast them?" Phil inquired. "Of course we can," replied Mary, preparing some marshmallows on wooden sticks. "Great," Bob said, and his antennas began to flicker slightly. "We'll use our superconducting roasting unit. This device will instantly heat the marshmallow to the desired temperature." "Don't," Mary cautioned, "they'll become a lump of coal." "Don't worry," Steve assured her, turning the appliance up to maximum power. In a few seconds the marshmallows were melted, and the heat gave off a strange glow, while the candy itself began to make a hissing sound. "Oh!" Bob shrieked, bringing one baked candy to his mouth. When he took a bite, his face immediately turned orange and he started making sounds like a jet engine running. "This is amazing!" shouted Bob, bursting with excitement. "It feels like I've absorbed part of your atmosphere." Jim and Mary at that moment took a careful bite out of a regular marshmallow and laughed. "That's not quite what we had in mind, of course, but maybe not all experiments end in disaster," Jim said. After the aliens got a little more comfortable with traditional marshmallows, they suggested making small improvements. "We've noticed that your marshmallows can be more hard in some cases than we'd like. We can help improve the texture," Phil said, pointing to some strange blue powder. Mary sighed. "Yes, of course we can try. Just no antimatter, please." Phil took the powder and added it to the pot of melted marshmallow, then stirred everything to a thick mass. "This needs to solidify," he said, and put the pot in the freezer for a few minutes. After a minute they pulled out their new version of marshmallow. It was incredible. It was bright blue in color, soft, yet slightly transparent, and it sparkled with little particles. How did you make it?" Jim asked. "We created a hybrid gel that gives your marshmallows more airiness and strength," Bob explained. Each of the Snow Pine residents took a bite and tasted the new treat. It didn't take long to get reactions. "It's like an air cloud," said Jim, as his marshmallow melted in his mouth. "On our planet we call that kind of thing sky sugar," Bob explained. When the marshmallow experiments were over, the Snow Pine residents invited the aliens to a traditional winter party. This time they already knew that the aliens were masters of new flavors and unexpected solutions. Soon a huge stage decorated with lights appeared on the square. Everyone drank mulled wine and enjoyed unusual marshmallows, and Bob and his team put on a real light show using their technology. Aliens have learned to fry marshmallows, and now they're frying them under starlight. Jim said excitedly, raising his mug. Mary only smiled. The aliens had brought many new things into their lives, but the most important thing they had learned was that despite all the unusual experiments and technical marvels, the most important thing was tradition, fellowship and smiles. "So," said Bob, raising his glass with mulled wine. "To new technologies and old traditions, to our evenings." Jim replied, and everyone drank happily, enjoying the warm mulled wine and marshmallows. Before leaving, Bob left Mary a note. "Thank you for teaching us your sweets. Next time, Earth Street food." Mary laughed and thought it might be very interesting to see how the aliens would teach them how to make space burgers or star hot dogs.